Coming to you from the Hudson Media Group studios. This is Talking Politics, and I am the professor, Fernando Uribe. There's a lot to discuss, so let's get started. Here's what I'm thinking about right now. Now, folks, for many weeks here on this show, I've been one of those individuals that have spoken out against sort of the toxicity by liberal college professors on our campuses and universities. Now, of course, as someone who works in higher education, I feel overwhelmed oftentimes by my liberal colleagues. But one of the things I take pride in is not just sort of educating in a very neutral and objective manner, but making sure I don't indoctrinate and brainwash my students. But when we see students mobilizing on campuses all across this country, and sometimes even coming out with some vile rhetoric, they have to be learning it from somewhere. Well, obviously, folks, it doesn't take a brain surgeon to deduce that they're learning it from their liberal college professors. And take this latest example in Washington, D.C. Now, the Supreme Court recently heard oral arguments concerning Daca, and nearby students from Georgetown University, Johns Hopkins University, and George Washington University walked out of class to raise awareness for Daca. Now, the Georgetown students marched throughout Georgetown and DuPont Circle, which is a popular not only tourist attraction, but a major traffic destination in the Midtown section of Washington, D.C. Now, just to sort of give you some context here about what the controversy is all about. Now, recently, folks, students at these nearby D.C. universities in the area walked out to raise awareness for the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, otherwise known as DACA, ahead of the Supreme Court oral arguments session that was just held in Washington, D.C. Now, ultimately, the Supreme Court is weighing the legality of President Donald Trump's decision to terminate the program, which was enacted by former President Barack Obama in 2012. Now, DACA, which was created through executive order, protects illegal immigrant children who were brought to the U.S. as minors. And many of these immigrants are now college-aged students. Now, students started the protest by organizing at their respective campuses, again at Georgetown University, Johns Hopkins University, and George Washington University collectively. Now, one of the things that was interesting, and one of the nonprofit organizations that I feel do really good work in sort of highlighting the liberal biases on college campuses is Campus Reform. You can certainly check out their website at campusreform.org for all of their excellent content. But to no one's surprise, obviously, Campus Reform sent reporters out to these demonstrations to find out exactly what students were mobilizing about. As we've all learned in recent years, yes, I don't ever want to deter anybody from mobilizing, taking to the streets, and peacefully assembling. But as we all know, when it comes to students on our college campuses, a lot of the left-wing rhetoric that they espouse has to come from somewhere. And of course, it comes from the educators on campus and even administrators. Well, again, these three universities in downtown D.C. are no different, as we saw, with many of sort of the visible outrage that we saw and some of the outbursts from people in attendance. Now, let me just sort of unravel this a little bit more for you, because, folks, one of the things that I would argue, doesn't sit well with me as an educator is, listen, what I try to do every single week is go out and teach the material to the best of my ability, to adhere to the curriculum that's set forth by the department chair and ultimately the university. But what we're seeing on our college campuses repeatedly is the idea that educators now feel it's their job to brainwash, to indoctrinate, because that's exactly what they're doing. Now, again, look no further than the recent demonstration in Washington, D.C., right ahead of the oral arguments heard before the Supreme Court. Now, folks, listen, I'll be very honest with you. I feel bad for parents all across the state and all across the country. They're sending their kids to these colleges and universities, paying tens of thousands of dollars for tuition, books, room and board, fees, everything else that goes with it. And they oftentimes don't get their money's worth. And more time than not, they're sending their students off to be brainwashed, which is what's happening. Folks, when we hear rhetoric on our college campuses or students mobilizing saying that ICE is un-American, or that ICE is upholding white supremacy, or upholding sort of other left-wing rhetoric, well, folks, listen, here's a newsflash, and something that maybe, unless you slept through your history class in elementary school and high school, ICE is part of the federal government, and probably the single most important facet of their responsibility as a federal agency is to guard our borders and to enforce our immigration laws. I don't know about you, but when it comes to sovereignty, just like ourselves and many countries around the world, we have a right to defend our sovereignty and to enforce our sovereignty. Part of defending our sovereignty is enforcing immigration law. Now, again, I'm the son of immigrants. I'm not going to sit here and try to be sanctimonious and tell you something that I'm not. But I understand the struggle of the modern immigrant. Again, my parents are immigrants. They came here 50 years ago, under different circumstances, of course, and sought better lives for themselves. My mom left the communism in Cuba, the oppression and tyranny that was there on the island, and my dad left a pretty mediocre economy in Colombia. Now, again, nothing against country of Colombia overall, but the economy was very mediocre, obviously prompting a lot of Colombians to migrate northward to the United States. And that's what my parents did. They came here and they did it legally and they did it the right way. And I understand not everybody can do that. We know immigration laws have changed dramatically in the last 50 years. Provisions for visas have changed, and even provisions for asylum have also been changed under previous administrations. But one of the things that I think gets lost in this entire argument is where students are learning some of this narrative when it comes to sort of denouncing ICE or denouncing the federal government, saying that it's somehow upholding, a fascist regime or promoting white supremacy type of rhetoric, which just isn't true. Now, again, I've talked about on this program repeatedly that I have serious issues with the president. His lack of decorum, his lack of diplomacy at times, his lack of civility. So, again, I'm not here to defend the president, but what he is simply doing is enforcing immigration law, as he's supposed to. Again, he is the chief executive. He's the head of the executive branch. And again, unless you slept through high school history, we all know the executive branch enforces the law at the federal level. And that's what the president's doing. And of course, he's doing it vis-a-vis the Attorney General and the Department of Homeland Security, which again, under that umbrella, encompasses ICE. Now, what we've seen in recent years, folks, again, is that immigration continues to be a hot-button issue, and it'll certainly be one going into the 2020 election cycle. But here's a newsflash for everybody. Now, I understand that many people are upset with the president's handling of immigration and what's going on with immigration reform, and with his decision to end Daca. Now, again, we'll see what the Supreme Court rules on this matter coming up in the spring, but in the meantime, immigration, enforcing our borders, and Daca will continue to be hot-button issues again in the months and again going into the next election cycle. But one of the things I think we lose sight of, and again, sort of going back to the disservice that liberal college professors do to our students, is the idea of talking about immigration openly and doing it honestly and doing it in a way that's intellectually genuine. We're not seeing that on our college campuses. Folks, here's a newsflash for you. Long before Donald J. Trump took the oath of office as the 45th president, the 44th president deported more people in his 8 years than the entire 16 years preceding him from Presidents George W. Bush and Bill Clinton. Now, that's a really big number. And again, this is not me concocting or fabricating some information. You can easily Google it and look it up online. But President Barack Obama deported more than 3.1 million individuals during his time in office from 2009 to 2016. Certainly those numbers pale in comparison to what his predecessors did, and even President Trump isn't deporting as many people as the media would have you believe. Whether it's the media being dishonest with you or even our educators, again, on our colleges and campuses and our universities alike, they're also doing it in service to our students. They're feeding them propaganda. They're feeding them this sort of rhetoric that just isn't true. Now, again, folks, do I want a more humane and just immigration system? Of course, I think we all do. All right, we don't want to be that country that isn't fair and just. I mean, again, we sort of view the United States as that beacon of light and of liberty and of justice in the world, and we try to set the example. And I understand people are sort of pissed off about what's going on with our immigration laws. But folks, when we see that sort of rhetoric being put forth, whether it's dishonestly by the media or by left-wing educators, it has to stop. And that's something that I don't subscribe to, and it's something that I won't do that. I won't do it to my students. I won't do it to my curriculum. I won't do it during my lectures. Because you know what? That's not educating. As I mentioned before, it's brainwashing. It's indoctrination. That's not what I went to college for. That's not what many of our kids go to college for. They go to learn. They go to open their minds. They go to sort of engage in dialogue and discussion. That isn't happening on our college campuses. Again, I don't want to sort of paint with a broad brush, but we're seeing that the cause of it really is liberal college professors and the toxicity that they put forth on a daily basis. I choose not to engage in it. I know some colleagues of mine don't, but a large majority do. And that's really doing an injustice to higher education and the learning that our kids try to do on a daily basis. I don't know about you, but it's getting worse, and during the next election cycle in 2020, you can rest assured that on our college campuses all across New Jersey and all across the country, we'll keep seeing more demonstrations with outbursts, hopefully no violence, but at the same time, some very polarizing rhetoric. Not all of it is exactly true. And who do we thank for it? You guessed it, liberal college professors who are doing it on a daily basis. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. And now to some local stories, some that you'll hopefully find interesting. Folks, it is indeed the holiday season, so whether it's Thanksgiving Eve, Thanksgiving, or the upcoming holidays, so whether you celebrate Christmas or Kwanzaa or Festivus or Hanukkah, wherever it is that you celebrate, people will be out, people will be celebrating, people will be going to holiday parties, people will be drinking. And there's no doubt that not only the state police, but the Department of Law and Public Safety will be enacting their annual checkpoints at certain destinations throughout New Jersey's 21 counties. Now, let me be very clear about something because I've talked about it on the program before, not just here, but also on my podcast. And one of the things, folks, that I am very adamant about is the misusage of what these checkpoints represent. I get it. We want the roads to be safer, not just only for motorists and pedestrians. We see and hear too many examples year after year about motorists being irresponsible and pedestrians paying the price for it. But folks, let's be very clear about something too. All right, while these DWI checkpoints are important, more and more people are utilizing ride-sharing services. So whether you're driving to a holiday party and you're barely having anything to drink, I urge you to please be careful. And the reason I say that is because we know that checkpoints all throughout New Jersey are nothing more than a moneymaker for local municipalities. I know some cops listening to this today will be saying, well, Fernando's just being disingenuous and being dishonest. No, I'm not, folks. Now, while I can never prove that departments have quotas on a monthly basis, we do know that these checkpoints provide serious revenue for municipalities all across New Jersey. Now, take here in Hudson County, for example. We have some intersections and roads and avenues that generate a lot of foot traffic and also general motor vehicle traffic. Whether it's John F. Kennedy Boulevard, which starts in North Bergen and stretches all the way down through Guttenberg, through West New York, through Union City, through North Bergen, through Jersey City, ultimately ending in Bayonne. Cops will be vigilant throughout the holiday season, not just for speeding, but also setting up a lot of these checkpoints. We'll be seeing it on roads in Secaucus as well, on Route 3, Patterson Plank Road alike. We'll also see it in parts of Kearney and Harrison, which, again, most people forget, is also part of Hudson County. But ladies and gentlemen, let me be very clear. And while I applaud and commend a lot of the hardworking men and women who are employed by these municipalities at our police departments, yes, they keep us safe. They help improve the quality of life in our municipalities and townships alike. But make no mistake about it, folks, a lot of these tactics when it comes to checkpoints are very underhanded. And they become very underhanded in the way because they're misleading. All right? They may try to tell you it's about keeping the roads safe, but make no mistake about it, it's a moneymaker. It generates revenues for a lot of these municipalities. Not just here in Hudson County, but we see it in municipalities down the shore during the summer. We'll see it during parts of Western Jersey and Southwestern Jersey. So what I urge my viewers here today is to be careful during the upcoming holiday season. If you can utilize a ride-sharing service, do that. It's the time to go to holiday parties and you want to drink and hang out with coworkers and friends and family. I understand that. We all want to do that. I ask you to do it safely. And I know a lot of you do that. So I don't want to sort of come down on anybody for wanting to celebrate during the holiday season. But again, be careful when you hit the checkpoints. Have all your documents in your vehicle. Make sure everything's up to date. Make sure that before the holiday season starts, check your license. Check with the Motor Vehicle Commission online. Make sure you have no outstanding tickets or summonses. The last thing you want to do is give these municipalities a reason to stop you. And once they do, and they run your license and your plate alike, they may find something. So again, be vigilant, be cautious, take the necessary accommodations you have to make sure you don't become another casualty. More importantly, not just for jail time, but for your pocket taking a hit during the holiday season. We see it far too often. And while I really have no scientific evidence to prove otherwise, we know that these methodologies are happening. They're happening right under our nose, and they're happening right in front of our elected officials. Yes, I get it. We want the roads to be safe. We want everybody to be able to be safe and secure during the holiday season. But folks, it doesn't mean that it's just another reason for municipalities to dig into our pockets, which is what a lot of these checkpoints do. They're invasive. They can be downright bothersome. To say nothing of the fact that even some police officers in many municipalities don't exactly display the utmost of professionalism during these checkpoints. Well, that can be a nuisance. And again, I'm not painting with a broad brush here because there are a lot of good men and women that are very hardworking and very diligent police officers. But there's always bad apples in every profession. And look no further than this one. And we see it each and every year during these checkpoints, not just during the holiday season, but the entire year overall. So again, during this holiday season, be safe, be vigilant, be cautious. More importantly, don't let municipalities dig into our pockets any more than they already do. Now, on a lighter note, folks, some good news coming out of Hoboken, and you'll be happy to learn that the Human Rights Campaign actually distributed their report cards for municipalities in New Jersey, and guess who scored perfectly? You know it, the Mile Square City of Hoboken itself. Now, just to sort of give you a context here, folks, the City of Hoboken did indeed receive a perfect score from the Human Rights Campaign and their Municipal Equality Index for their LGBT policies for the second consecutive year. Now, again, a shout out to fellow journalist John Hines with the Hudson County View for highlighting the story this week. Now, the mayor went out to say in a prepared statement, quote, our 100% rating from the Human Rights Campaign once again demonstrates that Hoboken is a fair and welcoming city where everyone is entitled to be treated equally and with respect, no matter your gender identity or means of expression. He also went on to say, quote, "We've taken a number of steps to further empower the members of our LGBT community over the past 2 years. So I'm proud to say that Hoboken is only one of 3 municipalities in the entire state of New Jersey to achieve this distinction. I thank the many activists and advocates, past and present, who have strived for equal rights for all residents in our city. In addition to raising the pride flag this year, Hoboken became only one of a select few communities in New Jersey to have painted rainbow crosswalks for Pride Month this past June." Now, folks, listen, whether it is the Hudson Pride Center located in Jersey City, who, by the way, do outstanding work on a daily basis, or Garden State Equality, led by Executive Director and a good pal of mine, Christian Friscarino, they're doing what I would argue God's work and making sure that everyone's treated equally and everyone's treated justly and equitably. So shout out to Mayor Ravi Bala, the administration of the city of Hoboken, and really its citizens for working hard to make sure that nobody in the LGBT community is marginalized. Shout out to Human Rights Campaign for their equality index that they promote every year. And listen, it's always nice to hear that a city like Hoboken, which is very diverse, not just culturally, but also along orientation lines, is doing their part to ensure that equality remains a priority in the Mile Square City. Now, folks, let me just put this out there because, it's one of those things I think becomes a very polarizing issue when it comes to discussing LGBT issues altogether. I'm Hispanic, and, for many of us raised either in Latin America or here by our parents, we know that Christianity and Catholicism tend to be the faith of practice that's done preeminently throughout the Latin American community. And one of the things that always becomes uncomfortable to talk about is either gender identity or orientation. But in recent years, I'm proud to say that, especially among Hispanics, that we've become much more comfortable in discussing with these issues, not just with our friends, right, but with our families. And that's not always easy, right? Talking about gender identity or orientation becomes very complicated, right? There seems to be this sort of, mindset about machismo and a very masculine type of oriented, mindset that dominates the Latin American community. And I get it. No one likes talking about these things, and they can be quite unsettling. But it's important that we try to do that. We try to do it with our kids. Let's do it with our family members. Again, folks, it's a holiday season. The last thing we want to do is alienate any family member that is a member of the LGBT community. I've had many friends who identify as LGBT from undergrad into grad school. And you know what? I treat them just the same as anybody else because I remember my parents taught me, regardless of race, regardless of, ethnic identity, gender identity, orientation, treat everybody the same, right? Don't we always hear during the holiday season, right, because it becomes very religious, about the idea of treating people rightfully and, really under sort of the context that, God treats everybody the same? Well, you know what? That's what I believe in. And we're always talking about some of these issues out in pop culture or on social media about how unsettling orientation can be. Well, here's a newsflash, folks. If we're ever going to invoke religion into these issues, right, and we talk about, and again, I'm just talking about as someone who's raised Christian and Catholic, right? So what I do is I subscribe to some Christian beliefs. I've read the Bible cover to cover. Some things in there I don't agree with. Some things in there that don't sit well with me. But by and large, I believe in Christ. I believe in a lot of Jesus Christ's teachings and what he stood for, right? In equality, in the idea of being just to your fellow man. And you know what? I'm all about that. But one thing we should especially learn during the holidays, and listen, shout out to the city of Hoboken and also with Human Rights Campaign for highlighting this. But you know what, folks, especially during the holiday season, when we're gathered around the dinner table, and sometimes we talk sports, we talk politics, we talk religion. Oftentimes, 3 things we should never be talking about in general because they're very polarizing issues. But you know what? If you're ever going to invoke religion into these discussions, remember, folks, if God's all perfect and Christ is perfect, then he created everybody equally. So this idea that anyone who's LGBT is viewed as an abomination by certain right-wing groups or certain Christian groups is just wrong. Because if you really believe in Christ and you really believe in his teachings, then guess what? Everybody was born equally in the eyes of God, in the eyes of Christ. So the next time you ever hear someone sort of talk about the LGBT community in a very negative manner or try to marginalize them and invoke religion into the conversation, just remind them, Christ wouldn't do that because Christ created us all, right? Isn't that what we hear, right, during the holiday season, right? Christ created us, Christ died for us on the cross and all that. Yeah, we've heard that, right? And we've read about it. Okay, if that's the case, then do us all a favor. Don't ever invoke religion when you're trying to sort of espouse views, especially about the LGBT community. Especially during the holiday season, folks, it's a very volatile time. It's a time where sometimes our neighbors, our friends, our siblings, our parents, anybody that's close around us maybe finds it the right time of the year to come out and to disclose their gender identity or disclose their orientation. Be patient, be understanding, okay? Give them a chance to talk, give them a chance to vent. It's not easy, okay? Nobody ever goes after me because I'm straight. Nobody ever goes after me or tries to marginalize me because I'm a heterosexual male. I don't know what it's like. I don't know what it's like to be oppressed or discriminated against because of my orientation, and I never will. But anyone who identifies as LGBT does face that oppression. They do face that marginalization. They do face that sort of prejudice. Don't add to it, okay? Be kind, be just. It's the holiday season. Not just during the holiday season, but do it all year round. Don't give people a reason to call you a bigot or to be prejudiced or whatever, a homophobe, anything like that. We don't need to be that way, folks. Let's just be accepting of each other. Now, again, I don't want to sound sanctimonious on this program, but you know what? When I hear about these accomplishments in Hoboken and other municipalities in New Jersey, why aren't more municipalities getting a better scorecard from the Human Rights Campaign? You know, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here, okay? This isn't trigonometry. This isn't calculus, which for the record for me is really, really difficult. But it's not hard to understand. We should all be doing a better job. Municipalities like Hoboken, I think, lead the state in being a good example about how to treat LGBT residents, and just in general, about being fair and welcoming. Listen, folks, I think as you know, I'm not a bleeding heart liberal, but there are some progressive issues I embrace because it's the right thing and the just thing to do. So again, as I said, during the holiday season, think about that before you open your mouth and you're talking about LGBT people. Look at Hoboken's example. Look at the great job they're doing to be more accommodating and to be more welcoming. We should hopefully do that, not just around the dinner table during the holiday season, but all year round, because it matters that much. You never really know who you're helping or who you're really encouraging by being more understanding, by being more patient, and being more tolerant. So again, a shout out to the Human Rights Campaign, grading Hoboken for the second straight year with a perfect score, again, in being accommodating and being welcoming to members of the LGBT community. They deserve it. They've faced a lot of oppression and prejudice for many decades. Let's try to erode that in 2020 coming up and for the years to come. Keeping in the Mile Square City, folks, and much to my disappointment, I'm sure the disappointment of many others, and again, as reported via the Hudson County View, so nice job by John Hines there, the sentencing of Hoboken political operative Frank Rea, who's convicted of voter-by-mail fraud, is again delayed until the month of December. Now again, Frank Rea, who was convicted back in June, his sentencing has been delayed and will not be taking place until any earlier than next month. Now Rea, who was initially supposed to be sentenced in October, it will now go before U.S. District Court Judge William J. Martini on the morning of December 2nd at 10:30 a.m., after briefly having his hearing set for the following day, according to the latest filings in this case. Now, Dio Braxton, who was also indicted with Frank Rea on Halloween of last year, is also sent to be sentenced at that same time. Now, this is the fifth date being issued in this case, which was delayed partially because Martini was deciding whether or not to grant Rea a new trial, which counsel had requested on the basis that cooperating witnesses in the trial cannot be trusted. Now, members of Frank Rea's inner circle, which include Matt Collegiate, Michael Holmes, and Freddie Frazier, were the government's key witnesses during the trial, all indicating that Frank Rea had been operating a scheme that involved paying low-income residents $50 each to fill out their vote-by-mail ballots in the 2013 municipal elections. At that time, Frank Rea was the council at-large candidate and was also pushing a ballot initiative that would have weakened the city's rent control laws if approved. Now again, thankfully, neither effort was successful. Ultimately, coming up in December, Frank Rea could face a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. Well, folks, I've talked about it on the air again, and I will repeat it until possibly I'm blue in the face. But when we look at degenerates like Frank Rea, and we look at degenerates like Matt Collegiate, and Michael Holmes, and Freddie Frazier, as well as other accomplice Dio Braxton, all I can tell you, folks, is I am hoping and I am praying. And Santa, if you're listening, do me a favor. Give me something to smile about this Christmas. Give Frank Rea and his band of degenerates the harshest penalty possible, okay? Because they need to be made an example of, okay? We always believe and we're hoping that elections are fair and honest. And clearly in Hoboken in 2013, that was not the case. Now, it's my understanding that the U.S. Attorney is still investigating them for any possible implication they may have in either 2015 or 2017. So the facts remain, and again, it remains to be seen whether or not any of these degenerates will face justice for anything they may have done during that time period. But rest assured, folks, I really hope that Frank Rea and the rest of them get what they deserve. They deserve the maximum penalty. If it's 5 years, so be it. If it's $250,000 fine, so be it. But make an example out of these people. Because you know what? They think they can act with impunity and try to corrupt the electoral process. And as far as I'm concerned, they shouldn't get away with it. And I get it that Frank Rea wants to, dispute the fact that, people like Matt Collegiate and other witnesses came forward and sort of threw him under the bus. Folks, rats will just, tell on other rats. And that's all that happened in this case. And again, whether it's Collegiate or the others, they should also get some jail time. Because what they did was wrong. What they did was unfair. What they did was corrupt the electoral process. And that's just something that should not go on. So again, if you're listening to this, Judge Martini, do me a favor. Make us all happy, especially residents of the Mouse Square City who've seen these people act in a very cavalier and a very reckless manner to wreck our elections, to wreck the fair process that we've all come to expect every November at the ballot box. I'm really hoping that they get justice because you know what? It's what they truly deserve. And that's our episode for this week. Folks, first and foremost, it is the holiday season, and certainly as you're watching this, we'll be celebrating Thanksgiving and all the upcoming holidays with our family and friends. And I want to take this opportunity to you, my loyal viewing audience. You know what? Since the show started in April, I can't tell you how flattered and humbled I've been by all the positive feedback. I can tell you right now, if you watched the first episode in April, it certainly was not my best. And what I've tried to do each and every week for you, the people, is to be better, is to be articulate, and to be informed, and to give you all the facts here on this program. And without you, the loyal listening audience, again, this show wouldn't be possible. So I want to thank you all for your support, for all the feedback you've given me on social media. And quite frankly, if you've loved the show, awesome. If you haven't liked it, tell me why, so I can make it better. And that's one of the things that really makes media so fulfilling. So again, I want to take this opportunity during the holiday season to thank you all for your support and really your encouragement here with the Hudson Media Group and certainly with Talking Politics. Because you know what? It isn't easy to talk about our political climate on a weekly basis. But you know what? I do it for you guys and gals at home, whether you're watching on your PC, your Mac, your smartphone, or tablet. Hey, it's why I'm so dedicated to being as openly and as honest here on this program each and every week. Once again, folks, you got all the excellent programming offered by the Hudson Media Group. Go to their websites, www.hmgtvshows.com and also www.livestream.com/HMGTV. Now, the Hudson Media Group is also proud to partner with NJ On Air. You can check out all the excellent programming there as well by going to their website, www.njonair.com. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and also follow them on Instagram and Twitter. In addition, folks, the weekly podcast, Talking the Hudson, which you can listen to live every Wednesday night by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson. It airs live every Wednesday at 9 p.m. And certainly you can listen to it from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. Don't forget to like the show on Facebook and also follow it on Instagram and Twitter. Without a doubt, folks, the Hudson Media Group is the perennial leader here locally in Hudson County, bringing you the best programming, the best coverage of our political climate, and most importantly, life that matters to you, the Hudson County residents. So on behalf of all of us here, we want to wish you a very happy holiday season. We'll be returning after the Thanksgiving break. And without a doubt, if we're talking politics, we're doing it right here with the Hudson Media Group. I'm Fernando Uribe. Thank you so much for watching.
Don't forget to catch Fernando's podcast at blogtalkradio.com/talkonthehudson. New episodes available every Wednesday night at 9 p.m.